This call is now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of 9x90. Today, we have a very, very, very special guest with us, my amazing older brother, who has achieved so many things. His intro is going to take me like 5 minutes. For those of you who do not know Edward Mermelstein, he is not only the coolest older brother on the planet, he is also the past commissioner of international affairs for the New York City mayor's office. He's held that position from January 5th, 2022 until July of 2025, leading the mayor's office as New York City's primary liaison to the diplomatic community, consular court, and the United Nations under Mayor Eric Adams. He is also one of New York's most influential figures in real estate. He has been described as a certified triple threat in the real estate world. And if that's not cool enough, he is frequently featured on CNBC, Fox Business, Reuters, and in publications like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, and Forbes. He is also a best-selling author and award-winning mentor in the illustrious international family office arena. He built and led successful ventures specializing in international real estate, transactions, corporate law, and private equity. He has been selected by name to speak at international family office events with billions, sometimes trillions worth of decision-making power flying in from around the world. He was selected to be the chair of the board of advisors for the Heritage Real Estate Fund. Their founding team has a combined track record of 440 years of experience and more than 20 billion in transaction volume. He is a very firm advocate reestablishing New York as the world's preeminent hub for finance, tech, life sciences, and international collaboration. And on the philanthropic side, he has also done everything there is to do. He established the Mermelstein Family Scholarship at NYU, served as chairman emeritus of COGECO, aiding integration of Russian-speaking Jewish immigrants. He served as president of Zaka International Rescue and Recovery from 2018 to 2021. And he played a key role in facilitating the 2008 return of the Danilov bells to the Russian Orthodox Church. And if you're wondering if he grew up just in the epitome of perfection, he actually immigrated here from Ukraine to the US in 1976 as a refugee. He attended Bronx Science High School, received a bachelor in psychology from NYU, and a JD from Western Michigan University. That's a very, very long list of achievements. Is there anything you have not done yet that you still want to do?
Well, first of all, Adi, I think you made it under 5 minutes, so thank you, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's probably my second or third, so I don't do too many podcasts usually. It's television, but I figure I gotta get into the groove with all the young people of America and start doing the things that everybody else is doing. So thank you for getting me out of my shell.
Thank you for humoring the young people of America. So you arrived to the US as a refugee from Ukraine, 1976. How was that early experience? How has that influenced your worldview, especially in shaping your diplomatic approach as New York City's prior Commissioner of International Affairs?
So we actually left in 1974, what was then the Soviet Union. My first memory outside of Ukraine was when we landed in Vienna, Austria, and somebody gave us a banana. Well, bananas to our family. That was the first time I had a banana. So it was green and tasted like sawdust, but it was probably, for someone that's never seen one of the most exciting things in the world. And these are the types of memories that shape, I think, refugees in general. When you experience something for the first time, and at that time I was already 7 years old, but the hardships on one side, and the very simple things that make people happy when they have nothing is something that I try to relay to both my children and people around me, especially those living in New York City, because for lack of a better way to describe it, we're extremely spoiled in New York. So when people are complaining about the fact that the city is very expensive and doesn't have housing, most people living in New York, many of them have been born outside of the United States. We have about 60% of people living in New York City have been born outside of the U.S. or are children of people born outside of the United States. So when they complain, it's because they've gotten used to the very good life. But most of the people that are complaining are people that never have been outside of New York City. And when you travel and when you see the world outside of New York City, you understand that we live in a very, very comfortable place. We have more food than anyone could ever want to imagine, if especially when you're living in emerging markets or parts of the world that have very little food. So if you're coming from whether it's Africa, parts of Asia, South America, some very, very poor parts of the world. And when I hear complaints in New York, it's hard for me to really get comfortable with people that have an issue about what I believe is the greatest city in the world.
I love when people are complaining about the US. I'm like, have you ever been to Cuba? They're like, no. I'm like, have you ever been to Haiti? They're like, no. I'm like, have you ever been to any emerging country? And they're like, no. And I'm like, maybe you should go and then come back to the US. But yeah. So you're a major advocate for moving large businesses back to New York City. As you pointed out in the Family Office International meeting a couple weeks ago, New York City is the 9th largest economy on the planet. Do you want to just go into a little bit more of what you've done over the past few years with bringing businesses? I know in February you had a slew of Asian CEOs coming to the New England area to meet with you personally to talk about relocating or putting additional headquarters in New York.
So yes, so what's happened, especially post-COVID, we lost, as it was reported, quite a few people that we're having a very difficult time living in what is one of the most concentrated cities in the world. We have more people living on certain blocks of New York City than we have towns outside of New York. When you go to a town in Ohio or in Kentucky that has 500 people or 1,000 people, we have 1,000 people in some of the buildings in New York City. So most people don't really grasp the size of a city that goes from 8.5 million people or 9 million people to 8 million people, and really you don't feel that as much. You feel it more in terms of tax base. But what we decided, and when I say we, Mayor Adams and I decided about 4 years ago, is that we would approach the diplomatic community in a way that we haven't approached them previously. And the idea was to build very strong relationships so that when the diplomatic community thinks of where to do business in the United States, they think of New York City. So we have the largest diplomatic community in the world. We have 116 consulates general. We have 193 missions, and then all the economic missions on top of that. And then, of course, we have the United Nations here in New York City. So between all of those entities, if you treat them well, and I don't think that they've been treated as well in any other administration as we have under our current mayor, who, when we said you have to meet with this head of state or you have to meet with this ambassador, I would say 90% of the time, unless there is a scheduling conflict, he would do that without question, because he trusted that we all have the best interests of New York City in mind. And what happened is, when you build these strong relationships, we wind up having a very strong the bridge, as they say, goes in both directions, or at least in case of New York. So in our situation, the idea was to create a pipeline in a way where the diplomats think of New York City as the only place for them to bring their delegations, whether it's business delegations or diplomatic delegations. And when they're treated well, they remember that, and they certainly make sure that when a large business delegation comes to the United States, that their focus is on New York City.
So your family has been in commercial real estate in the New York City space for decades. Between you and your brother, you've done about what, 7-8 billion in transaction volume, and I know Yuri has another 9 billion in transaction volume just in the pipeline for the next few years. Can you walk us through how that impacted how you saw the growth opportunities and the types of growth that you saw under Mayor Adams? Because I know when I'm watching your brain talk about commercial real estate, you're like, if I put this type of company here, it's going to need this many employees, which is going to increase the need for housing in this cost range. So we're going to need housing over here. Can you just walk us through how that prior worldview helped you guys to grow the economy over the past few years?
So when we came to the U.S., New York City was in a very difficult place. And in the 70s, you'll see movies like The Bronx is Burning. That's what actually was happening. New York City was burning. It was in a terrible economic situation. Well, all kinds of very difficult things happening in New York City. And you fast forward late 80s, early 90s, city started coming back very strong. A lot of that had to do with the fact that we had a mayor that focused on safety and policing, and there are certain arguments that can be made with respect to safety and policing, but the one argument that you can make is it's very good for real estate. And when people live in New York and feel safe, they will continue to invest, and they will continue to raise their children here. And that's what we were seeing. So the opportunities in real estate in New York are in many ways similar to the opportunities that we see in the stock market. Stock market over the last 100 years has done extraordinarily well. In the same fashion, real estate in New York over the last 100 years has done extraordinarily well. It's also one of the safest asset classes. Unlike stocks, it's very hard to lose 100% of the value of your real estate. And that's one of the reasons why when people invest in New York, and New York has always been considered one of the safest and best performing real estate markets in the world, on a long-term basis, it's very, very hard to do poorly in investing in New York City's real estate market. And as you mentioned, yes, if you've been around this market long enough, you can actually see addresses in your mind, and you can see how people have shifted from one part of the city to another. You can see how certain parts of the city have grown and become extraordinarily popular, and in some ways influenced other parts of the country. So, for example, places like Soho, or places like parts of northern Brooklyn that have just exploded in the last couple of years. Well, I shouldn't say couple of years, couple of decades. Those areas influenced other parts of America. So whether it's certain parts of Miami that have seen a very similar type of growth that has been replicated just because of what they were seeing happening in New York. You even see it in some parts of the country that are not as popular, such as Detroit, for example, because what was happening, and I think it started in a way that everyone is copying in Soho. So Soho used to be a very depressed, poor neighborhood, and someone decided that if they let artists move into the neighborhood and just live there for free in certain cases, that cool people will follow, and that's been replicated not just in New York City, in many parts of New York City, and in other parts of America, but I think it's being replicated now all over the world. So that's a typical situation.
My father used to, when we were children, he would drive us to the ghettos around New York City, and he would point out all the warehouses and say explain how if we wanted to do an urban renewal, we would buy that warehouse and give the entire, like a few floors to artists. And then how the rest of the city would redevelop around it.
Yeah, that actually continues today, and now it's transformed into a little bit of a different scenario where you have nonprofits that are finding locations all over the country, and are buying in depressed areas warehouses and businesses, and moving artists into those spaces in order to reinvigorate those spaces, and it's very interesting to see that through the lens of nonprofits as opposed to strictly for profits business. And for me, that's truthfully a lot more fun to get into the middle of, because now you're not just helping grow the business, but you're also helping artists that would normally not have a place to work out of. And those are the types of relationships and projects that I like to get into.
One of my friends in May, he was proposing that instead of starting a Heritage Real Estate Fund, I should start a fund with him where we buy these warehouses strategically across the US and put artists in them, and then buy all the real estate around it and just sit on it for a few years and wait for it to go up in demand and value. But we were like, maybe with Heritage Real Estate Fund 3. So what are some of the impactful city-to-city agreements or initiatives you've spearheaded to advance New York's leadership in finance, tech, and life sciences?
So under this administration, we actually, I think, had more city-to-city agreements and city-to-state, as well as in certain cases, city-to-federal government agreements than any other administration in New York City. And one of the reasons that we were doing these MOUs or LOIs was basically to drive business to New York City, and vice versa, because it's always a question of exchange of best practices. And our goal was to find strategic sectors that are complementary to the country or city that we were looking to partner with, and those sectors would help us grow business here in New York, but also help our respective partner on the other side of the planet grow businesses as well. So, as an example of the diversity, we had a MOU signed with Ho Chi Minh City. We also had an MOU signed with the Economic Ministry of Israel, and that's the diversity that speaks to us trying to connect with cities and countries all over the world on issues such as exchange of best practices in terms of government services, but also in cases of what we've done with Israel, it's basically to drive technology companies to New York City. And how well, the results of how this played out, and I'll give you an example, is 7 years ago, you look back, um, most of the startups from Israel, which is known as the Startup Nation, were going to the West Coast, to Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. Fast forward today, and this happened mostly in the last 3 years, 75% of same type of companies coming from Israel to the United States are coming to New York City. And I would say that's a fairly significant swing, because out of the 25%, 7 years ago, we were getting maybe 5% of that 25%. Today, we are getting 75% of the businesses coming from Israel. And that speaks to the business friendliness of New York City, and just overall feeling that people see the fact that it's the safest large city in America, and people recognize that there are very few places in the world where you can raise money as quickly as you can raise it in New York City. So having the capital of finance also be the city where you have the largest number of jobs in the technology sector, which most people don't know, but we have more tech jobs today in New York than we have finance jobs. That's our secret sauce, is the fact that we can have such a diverse economy with such a diverse population, and it all works. And I think that speaks quite highly of the current administration today.
Okay, as the founder of firms like One and Only Realty and Ream, Bell and Mermelstein, what core philosophy or strategy guided your success in international real estate transactions, and how has that translated to what you've done most recently with New York City?
Well, I think how it all starts is just hard work. And you look at our kids. So my kids are growing up very, very differently than I grew up, and the fact that they want for nothing creates a very different mindset. So I grew up where I had, by the time I was in college, at least 10 different jobs. Everything from shoveling snow in the wintertime to carrying bags from a supermarket to somebody's car, and getting tips for that, and everything in between, working in hotels as a front desk clerk, in construction. So those are the jobs that build character, and having served in the Army certainly built quite a bit of character as well. Um, but it certainly didn't hurt the fact that I spoke another language and I came from another culture, and I think that's what is what drives New York City to be number one in practically anything that we go after. And the fact that I spoke Russian, having come from the Soviet Union, opened up all kinds of doors for me. So when I started as an attorney in the mid 90s, the Soviet Union was falling apart, and money from all kinds of new ventures that were being started in the post-Soviet Union countries started to slowly come into the United States. And one of the things that I recognized, along with the people that I was working with, is that if you are working with emerging markets and you establish yourself as the expert in those emerging markets, people will come to you. And that's exactly what happened. The press started recognizing what was happening. They recognized the fact that as an attorney, most of the clients that were coming into the United States from that part of the world were coming through my office. And then eventually, as I moved away from the legal field and started working in the private equity space and consulting, the same clients basically followed me from the um, law side to the family office and consulting side.
That makes sense. So you have this way where you make people feel like they're safe no matter what business venture you go into with them.
Well, I think some of that just has to do with upbringing. I went to um, so many countries when I was growing up, and the fact that I was in first grade three times, um, whether it's I don't know if it's dyslexia or whatever you call it, ADHD, I had all kinds of different issues studying when I was a child because each country I came into.
Countries three times. Okay, give yourself a break. What first grader is going to hop to Israel from Ukraine and say, "Oh, I know Russian. Here's Hebrew." That's not dyslexia. That's a new language. And then
But
hop from Israel to the U.S. and go, "Oh, another completely new alphabet." Like you're holding yourself to this impossibly high standard. If you think at the age of 7 you were going to just magically learn three entirely different languages and different alphabets.
so yes, but at the same time, you also don't really understand in which language you're writing or which language you're reading, because you may be reading in English, but your brain is still working in German, because in 1976, when I came to the United States and I just started learning English, at that point, I was speaking Russian, I was speaking Hebrew, I was speaking German, because I went to school or to kindergarten and then first grade in Israel, first grade in Germany, and then first grade in the United States. So you have to relearn, but your mind is still working in a different language, and these are things that also. Um, if you don't have a tutor, or if you don't have someone teaching you how to learn in a new language, it's something that takes quite a bit of adjustment. So
Okay, wait, no, because I'm on my way to 40 and I still will mix things up where I'll be stuck in like Ladino or Italian or Spanish and I'm trying to switch to English and I just say, I don't even know how you say that in English. Like the other day when you had to correct my Hebrew grammar and it was like, if you're saying my Hebrew grammar is wrong, I believe you. Like that's a completely normal thing. I think you're holding your 6-year-old self to impossibly high standards right now.
well, with that said, again, it goes back to how most people grow up, and I grew up with parents that worked extraordinarily hard, were barely at home. So yeah, when I see people complaining about the difficulties they're having in the United States, for me, it's very hard to swallow, because if you've lived in other countries and experienced the hardships in other countries, you recognize how wonderful we have it here, how this is truly the best country in the world. With all its problems, we are still the best country in the world.
So, in your years with philanthropic roles, what lessons about leadership, crisis response, or global community have stayed with you?
Yeah, that's for me the most rewarding part of anything that I do, is being in the nonprofit sector and getting involved with different organizations that are helping people both here in the United States and in other parts of the world that can't help themselves. And I think that's something that we as a country and New York as a city have to recognize, that we have it so good, and we're rather than complaining about all the things that are wrong with this country, we have to figure out how do we um, do what other countries require, just as part of living in that country. So whether it's volunteering or joining the military, which many countries require, that's not required in the United States. There's no requirement to volunteer anywhere. There's no requirement to join the military in the United States, and I hate to say it, but I think that's one of the things that we are lacking here, because once you start helping people, whether it's in your neighborhood or going to Africa and helping people in South America, that's when you start recognizing how wonderful we have it here and how we should be proud of the country that we live in. And that's what I learned in the world of philanthropy. That there's nothing like being able to give back, because you get much more from it than you are giving. And that's a lesson that I learned from my rabbi over many years, that give until it hurts, and if you're not hurting enough, you're not giving enough. So what's magical is the more you give, it always somehow makes up for itself in one way or another. Whether it's you have a new deal that comes in that was unexpected, or something happens where just because you didn't think that you were able to write that big check, or spend the time doing something that is helping another person, and all of a sudden you see something happen that makes up for it. So that's my 2 cents on that issue.
And everyone who knows my family knows there's no option not to get involved in charity, which is why we have all of those awards from different national, local, and international philanthropic endeavors over the years. But I'm a huge fan of taking your kids to, even if it's just feeding the homeless or helping some nonprofit at least once per month. We had last year, people were so impressed when my 3-year-old was he was 2 at the time, walking around and helping move boxes at a charity warehouse one weekend. It was like, this is how they were raised. This is what they expect. Once a month, they will be helping a nonprofit somewhere. But no, I think it's absolutely imperative. And for those of you with kids in middle school, I would highly recommend that you look at Rotary International or another organization. Something my parents did with us when we were in middle schools, we had to go to third world countries for nonprofits. My first one was a month in Cuba. It really helps you to realize how much you should appreciate not only about your parents, but the country you came from, your family, and everything else that you have. Okay, so wrapping up on philanthropy and moving into what you're doing now. So you've described investing in emerging markets like Ukraine as a once in a generation opportunity. And we kind of already walked through how over the past few years, people can look at what you did in New York City with identifying opportunities, building micro emerging markets, changing pockets of the city by bringing key stakeholders in, which therefore brought in the population. You brought the companies in and the employees followed. And now you're looking to take that same model and bring it to Ukraine with investing in the development of specific professional entities and business ventures, helping to rebuild the economies there. Do you want to walk us through that?
Sure. So start with the fact that I've been working in that world for over 30 years at this point. I've been traveling to the former Soviet Union since the mid-90s, and I was seeing how the collapse of the Soviet Union created a tremendous amount of wealth in that region. Not all of it was done in a way that I appreciate, and some very nefarious people that came out of those countries with all kinds of different issues. But with that said, there were also many great businesses that were built, businesses that went beyond their borders, and people that turned those businesses into international corporations that are now also extraordinarily involved in philanthropic ventures as well. So you get to see the full gamut, and I saw that happen in the Soviet Union after it fell apart, especially in places like Russia. Russia created tremendous amount of wealth, and a large portion of that made its way to the United States, and a large portion has made its way to Europe and other parts of the world. I think we can do better. I think if we see peace in the region and Ukraine has an opportunity to go through a similar type of growth spurt. One of the big issues that I had with Russia and the region in general is lack of corporate governance, rule of law, significant lack of rule of law. And again, just going back to why this country is so attractive to other parts of the world is that we have a great legal system, and our rule of law and corporate governance is unmatched. And that's why everybody goes to the United States. So when you build a bridge between the U.S. or in my case, over the last 3.5 years, between New York City and other parts of the world, and export what we do well. So whether it's corporate governance, best practices on running a city, building out a system where the rule of law is something that is just in the fabric of a country. If we can replicate something similar in a place like Ukraine, you will have a country that is going to be not just one of the wealthiest countries in Europe, but probably one of the most successful countries in Europe. And simple reasons is they have everything. Their talent is extraordinary. The education there is top notch. Even during the war, the students that are studying in Ukraine are still getting extraordinarily well educated. So education is up there. You have one of the richest soils in the world. There's a reason why Ukraine is being referred to as the breadbasket of the Soviet Union. Their strategic minerals and metals that are underground, something totally untapped, and there's a reason why the United States just recently signed an agreement to partner on what's underground in Ukraine. We're going to see the reliance on Chinese strategic metals and minerals that we've been relying on for so many years shift to other parts of the world, and Ukraine is going to be right up there. Technologically, they're extraordinarily advanced, and we're seeing that play out on the battlefield. So their military tech is some of the best in the world, and we'll be seeing the export of that technology to the U.S. and to the rest of the world as well. And in general, their retail is going to be growing exponentially. The country is going to be rebuilding, so infrastructure is something that is going to have a tremendous amount of investment. So whether it's roads, bridges, office buildings, residential properties, all of those are going to be built or rebuilt simply because much of it was destroyed during the war. So the opportunities in a country that is between Europe on one side and Russia on the other is just strategically very, very well positioned to do well long term.
What would you say over the next year you are most excited about investing in there versus the next 5 years, speaking in your capacity as the chief of the board of advisors for Heritage Real Estate Fund?
Well, always keeping in mind risk, and risk, whether it's during the war or after the war, exists in that part of the world in a way that
we like you because you always find a way to decrease and mitigate it. So
that is something that we focus on quite often, is creating creating a structure where we reduce the risk as much as possible. And that's something that we've done previously in that part of the world, and we'll continue to do that, because there are mechanisms that exist and have always existed. You just have to make sure that you educate the other side as to why certain things are needed in order for a deal to go forward. They clearly understand the importance of partnering up with U.S. entities. So whether it's with U.S. funds or investors in general, having a U.S. partner in that part of the world reduces the risk of a further conflict. The more connections the United States has with Ukraine, the less likely there will ever be another war in that region. And they understand that extraordinarily well, which is also one of the reasons why they welcome U.S. investors and U.S. funds, U.S. banks. But they also have a lot of work to do in order to be able to attract the U.S. funds in a way that's going to be meaningful, because the risk of investing in Ukraine today is extraordinarily high. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the rule of law is not in place where most people know how to reduce that risk. And that's where experts come in. That's where we come in and do our job and make sure that our investors' money is protected, and make sure that the government of Ukraine recognizes how important it is to protect investor money from anywhere around the world, but especially from the United States.
Okay, so you don't want to mention on the show exactly what you plan to do to mitigate risk. That's fine. That's fine. Hold your cards close to your vest. I appreciate it. He disclosed in the board meeting like a few minutes ago great strategies, but I guess we're not going to share those. So you guys can only go through us if you want something done well.
Well, we have to create value for our business. Once we put out the secret sauce, then everybody is going to have a similar idea. But again, the fact that when you have 30 years of experience in a market, it is hard to replicate in any way. And if you give somebody an idea, execution of that idea is not necessarily very simple.
Okay, that's why you're the best older brother ever. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to share with the audience? We have 4 minutes left.
So I think we touched on quite a bit. One of the things that I'm focused on today is what's happening in the United States and in U.S. politics is quite worrisome, because a lot of what's happening is not necessarily something that just naturally happens in any country. And the fact that we are so divided today as a country, where you have a mindset from large cities being very, very different than the mindset of rural areas, and the South having a different mindset than the North is quite worrisome for me. I grew up respecting this country. I grew up being very proud of this country, and when we see major changes taking place, that's certainly of concern. We have a significant election that is coming up here in New York City, and as you mentioned, this is the 9th largest economy in the world, one of the most complicated cities to run. And the fact that you have someone that has absolutely no experience in running a city, and has gotten to the point of being a Democratic nominee is a huge concern, because you understand, as someone who has worked in this government, what the needs of this government are, and what the people in New York City expect. And they expect simple things. So they expect a safe city. They expect a city to continue thriving economically. They expect a city that has housing, that has affordability. But let's not forget, when a city is very popular, the housing and affordability are going to suffer because people are going to be moving into the city. The one way to make a city affordable and have more housing is to scare everybody away from New York City. And if you bring in, and we saw this obviously during COVID, a lot of people left the city, and the prices of real estate dropped significantly, up to 20% in certain areas. And that's something that you can certainly expect when someone comes in that creates a tremendous amount of risk in business. And that's something that worries me quite a bit, because I do expect that the city is going to be run by someone that does have experience. So those are just some thoughts I had on what is happening in our country, and especially in our city, because I'm very invested and vested in what I believe is the greatest city in the world. I want it to succeed, and I'm hoping that whoever is going to be our next mayor here in New York is going to
Not
do
from the
do what's
economy.
right for New York City, and certainly not create all kinds of harebrained ideas that are impossible to enact and impossible to work with. Because that's what will happen, is you will create a very, very affordable city, but a city that no one wants to live in. And let's not forget the lesson learned from what was once the wealthiest city in the world, and that was Detroit, and today one of the poorest large cities in America. And that's what I think we can expect if we make bad decisions in New York City.
What do you think of this comment that one of the largest international family offices that likes to crash economies and then buy everything at fire sale prices? What do you think of the comment that they're behind the manipulation of the current New York election?
So I hate guessing. It certainly is possible that something like that happens, and yes, I'm aware that things like that happen around the world. I would hate for that to actually play out in a city like New York, because you're playing with one of the largest economies in the world, and when you try to crash a large economy, you see what can happen. It didn't play out too well in Venezuela, which was on its way to becoming one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And what happened is Venezuela decided to embrace socialism, and now it's one of the poorest countries in the world. So, and we can have these conversations about many, many other socialist governments. I came from what was a communist government, so I know what that looks like and feels like. I do not want to see it in the United States, because it always ends badly. And you can ask anyone that has experienced it, that does live in the United States. You ask any refugee that has come from, whether it's the Soviet Union, or China in certain cases, Venezuela. We have many, many residents from Venezuela here in New York City. If you tell them that socialism is coming to New York City, they will do anything possible to make sure that that doesn't happen. But it's not easy if you're a refugee from Venezuela living in New York City today.
Based on what you've seen over the past few decades, when New York City's economy has like a little micro crash or the bubble bursts, how does that impact the rest of the world?
Well, we've seen this play out. So whether it's
The young people who haven't seen it played out.
well, that's unfortunately the case. Is most of the younger people living in New York don't understand what the financial crisis of 2008-9 felt like. It felt like, for me at least, like COVID, but without being sick. Um, it's very scary. It's
The
very
suicide
scary.
rate, the suicide rate was off the charts. The unemployment rates across the country. Do you remember a few of those stats off the top of your head? I know I'm throwing this question at you, Ed.
I don't remember the stats, but I do remember some of the other downturns that we've had in New York. And to your point that when you crash an economy for a certain period of time, especially places like New York, it's a buying opportunity. That's not what I want to see. That's not what
But
anyone I know wants to see.
it's not just a buying opportunity, it's a buying opportunity at the cost of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people across the US. The job market after we have an economy crash in New York City, the job market in the US crashes. We have an economic collapse across the US. And when we have an economic collapse across the US, then you see an economic collapse in Mexico. And then when they have their economy collapse because ours collapsed, you see a trickle effect all the way through the rest of Latin America, as well as many other countries around the world. So one election where people think, oh, it's just an election. Oh, let's just let him sit in that spot for a year. It can be a snowball or butterfly effect to crashing the global economy all over again. And we haven't had enough time for recovery since the last crash for people to really rebuild and restore their coffers and to restock their barns and everything else.
Well, yes, and to your point, COVID messed up many people and the way that they think, and that was very much a physical and a psychological situation that destroyed the world in many ways. But when you look at a collapse of an economy, such as what we had 2008-9. Now, people were, as you mentioned, they were committing suicide, not just in the United States, they were committing suicide all over the world. Um, it was a very, very scary situation that luckily we haven't seen in a long time, but at the same time, the fact that we haven't seen that in a long time, people forget and people don't understand what can happen if economies are very fragile, and if you just give it a very simple push in the wrong direction, it can go very, very badly. And we've had this conversation over and over. What happens when someone that doesn't know how to run one of the largest economies in the world, especially from the financial perspective, because New York City is moving into a very difficult time. We have major reductions in federal grants and spending moving in our direction. The state is projecting a large deficit. While New York has done quite well post-migrant crisis, we were able to absorb the $7 billion into our economy and get out of it under the leadership of Mayor Adams. But that's because he tightened the belt and he slowed spending. That's going to be close to impossible under a different type of leadership, a leadership that is trying to give everything away for free. When
But
you give it away,
you also strengthened you helped to increase the amount of money coming into the city by having all these huge international corporations bring an office to the city. And now with the next person and his plans, he's going to be chasing those people that are your cash source out of the city while trying to increase the amount that they're spending.
that's
So he's
correct.
draining the bank and then going to the bank expecting to pay for things when there's no money in there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that is the mindset of many people that don't understand economics today. It's the mindset of people that think that they don't have to work for a living, that they should be getting everything for free. Entitlement is something that doesn't exist in any other part of the world that I know of. If we're talking about
Not in my
emerging
family
markets. Emerging markets don't have that ability to think that way. People have to actually work for a living, and grit is something that's part of the fabric in most of those countries. You don't work, you don't eat. And the fact that in the United States people just expect to get things for free is it's unfortunate. You have to work hard in order to get anything, and it's at the end of the day it's not free because somebody's paying for it.
Okay. We're a few minutes over. Do you have any other things you wanted to?
We're good. We're all set.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and answering a lot of questions.
Thank you.
Some of you from the family office bubble who did not get a chance to meet Edward at the event on the 31st, you can connect with him on WhatsApp. For everyone else, you have to navigate an army of social media marketing team members who will not let you talk to him. Sorry. I'm kidding.
No, I'm actually quite easy to get in touch with, despite what Adi says.
I'm joking. Okay, so how do you want people to reach out to you? Only with nice things. If you threaten him, I will be very upset.
Yeah, LinkedIn is quite easy. It's probably one of the easiest ways to reach me. And the fact that I've just stepped down from government and in the process of joining all kinds of different boards and ventures, I will have new emails and phone numbers coming up quite soon.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you all back online next time. Bye.
Thank you.